Welcome friends, I'm Will Whitfield with W3 Productions, and today I have a update tutorial to one of my earlier Daz to Blender tutorials. Basically how to export from Daz Studio in FBX format and import into Blender. The previous tutorial used Blender 2.79 or 7.8, and since Blender 2.8 stable has been released, I thought I would update that to something that people will be able to follow along a lot better. I've already had some feedback about the old tutorial for new Blender users not being able to quickly follow what's going on in that tutorial, and I've learned a few things since then. They may streamline their process. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm using Daz Studio 4.11, and as you can see I have a character. It's based off the Genesis 2 male, and it is animated and clothed and all that. So we have an walking animation at 30 frames per second, and that's the gist of that. So when you have your character all ready to go in Daz Studio, you of course want to save your file, but you want to go ahead and export it and save it where you want to save it. I'm just going to overwrite a prior file that I have. Name your file, make sure you have Autodesk FBX selected, and with that selected, hit save. I'm just overwriting a prior file. Then you get your FBX export options, and just take note of what I have selected here. You can deviate a little bit from this, but not too much. So of course we want the selected figure. Actually, let me go back here, make sure I have the character selected just in case. Figures, animations, lock, limits, and morphs. Sometimes I can use FBX 2014 binary, but I mostly just stick with this as a default. Embed textures, merge clothing into figure skeleton, allow degraded skinning, allow degraded scaling, and subdivision information. And those are options that I use, so they worked pretty well so far. So hit accept. You'll see the conversion process starting out. It will basically zero out your character back into a T-pose. And then eventually you'll see it move along the timeline, rigging and going through each frame of the animation. This shouldn't take too awful long. And when you see that box go away, your file has been exported. So with that being done, we're going to go ahead and go to Blender 2.8. The stable release has been released. So first thing I'm going to do is not delete the default cube, but I'm going to repurpose it. I want to make a sidewalk for my character to walk on. So I'm going to hit GZ -1, bring it to the floor, then hit SY to scale it along the y-axis, stretch it out that way, and I'm going to move it to the side by hitting GX and moving my mouse over here. Now let's go ahead and import our character. File, import, FBX. Going to find my character. It is this file, and you can expect the file size to be between here and maybe like 70 megabytes, somewhere in that range. Usually is what I get for the Daz Studio characters. So if it's like 1 megabyte, you probably didn't capture everything. Want to go back through your steps and make sure you export it correctly. Here in the options for import FBX, You can change your scale of your character when you first import it instead of scaling it later. But the important things to do are two things. Uncheck pre-post rotation, then go to the armatures tab and check automatic bone orientation. Otherwise, it'll look very messed up when you import it. So go ahead and hit import FBX. And there we have our character. You might notice that this came in about 139 frames. This had 165. One reason might have been is that I didn't change the number of frames here at 25 frames per second. But you can also always change it manually by going to the dope sheet editor. And I'll do that by going to animation, going to the first frame or frame 0 of the animation and hitting S to scale out. Oh, actually I should go from frame 1. Go to frame 1, first frame of animation, hit S to scale out, and you can basically delay the animation as long as you want. Just a helpful tip. Let's go back to the layout and briefly scrub the timeline to see what we have. You will note even in solid mode, the character, or solid viewport, the character looks very shiny. And I'll get to that in a moment. But otherwise, you can see that we have a pretty good walking animation as we did in Daz Studio. Until we zoom in closer. One of the problems I have with the FBX format is that the fingers tend to get very gnarly. If I can zoom in a little bit more, you will see what I'm talking about. The fingers are all kind of bent forward out of shape. Same thing with the left hand. They're all bent forward. And it's kind of an easy fix. So to do that, make sure the armature is selected, not the character itself. Hit tab to go into edit mode. And we'll just briefly work on the left hand. I'm not going to do both. It's the same process. I'm going to zoom in here to the left hand. You can see that, let me select one bone so I can focus on that, that all the finger bones are kind of moving outwards at a 45-degree angle, and we just need to correct those. Let's go to wireframe view for shading. I'm going to grab the tail of each bone and move it back to the end of the other bone, just like so. Selecting each one, hitting G, and dragging it and left clicking to put it into place. Grab each one, hit G, into place. These palm bones basically belong, I believe they belong in the middle. This one belongs in the middle of the first two fingers, and this one belongs in the middle of the second two fingers, like so. Grabbing each one, G, and then clicking it into place. And then we're going to do the same thing in front view, because it's also off in front view as well. Don't grab the whole bone, just grab the tail end of it. Hit 1 for front view. You can see, so hit GZ and move these into place. You can see that it's still a little off. We're just trying to line up the fingers like you would in a normal human skeleton. Don't grab the whole bone, just part of it. And I'm rushing through this, but you probably want to take more time just to fine tune the bones to get a better result. And I think that about does it. Maybe I'll move the wrist. I'll leave that bone alone. So hit tab to get back into object mode, and let's look at our left hand. After I get myself situated, go back to solid view. Let's go to another frame, maybe where the hand's in front. There we go. Let me see, that's a much better result than we had earlier. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better. So like I said, take your time and adjust the bones to get the best result that you can. Other than that, rigging and motion wise, you get a pretty good result. Now the other problem is the materials. Like I mentioned earlier, this seems very shiny, and the reason for that is that each material, particularly with the skin, has the metallic value turned all the way up. See, when you import the character into Blender 2.8, it automatically uses the principled shader, and we'll take a look here at this in a second. Just bear with me as I'm using more resources now for my computer. Let me go ahead and close this. If my audio drops out, it's because my computer is taking up a lot of resources. So here goes nothing. Let's go to shading. Actually, I'm just going to hit look dev right now. Let those textures load in. And a couple things we can notice, like this is the hair material, and you see this black band. That's not a headband. That's actually the skull cap material. And because it's supposed to be using an alpha channel, the hair just looks like one solid brick instead of, or mesh instead of being wispy. We need to adjust the alpha channel because we're using the EV engine. It'll be a little bit different for cycles though. I want to go ahead and just hide the armature for a moment so we can see the eyes. So same thing here with the eyes as the hair. The alpha channel is not set properly when we import it, so just a couple quick fixes will adjust that. So selecting the hair object, let's go ahead and go into the shading window. Let's zoom back in and look at the material. There are about maybe about 5 materials for this hair object. And it's basically the principled shader being fed by a lot of image textures to various values. This one, the metallic value is 0, which it should be. And the alpha channel is being fed by an image texture. But we're going to go down here to the bottom and change for that material, each one of these, go down to settings and change the blend mode to alpha hashed. And now you see right away that band on the forehead went away. Also going to change shadow mode to alpha hash. We don't want it leaving a shadow either. And we do the same thing for each material. I'm going to do that very quickly. During the beta, I was using alpha blend. We see the hair kind of parted here. But now alpha blend actually gives a very distorted look, so I no longer use that method. Looking a lot better now. And that's it for the hair. And that's a lot closer to what it's supposed to look like. So let's go ahead and click on the mesh for the body and take a look at a couple of things. As we see here, we have the leg material selected, which the legs are covered by jeans, but we'll just use this for an example. The metallic value is set all the way up to 1 and specularity is all the way up to 2, and that's probably not what you're going for your look for most human characters. So I would just suggest setting that to 0 and setting this to, maybe I'll use like 0.5. You don't want to get rid of all the specularity. You want a little bit, but not a lot. So I'm not going to change all the materials because there's a lot of them, and you'll get the idea. So I'm just going to do the head and the face, and maybe the neck. Go ahead and do the face. You'll begin to see the difference. .5 and metallic to 0. A lot more fleshy looking face than before. Trying to find the head. Keep scrolling past it. Here we go. 0, 0.5. Then the lips. Looking much better. Now we have to go to every eye material and see what's going on. For the eye reflection, we see the alpha is turned to 0, means fully using the alpha channel. But we need to go ahead and I'm just going to turn on preview, give you an idea what it's looking like. See, that disappeared. And let's go to tear or tear. Same thing. Irises is being fed by image texture for the alpha. I'll go ahead and do the same thing here. Cornea, definitely. While I'm doing this, I'm going to go ahead and, if I don't do it earlier in the video, just leave a link in the top right for the playlist. I have several videos discussing how to move your Daz characters into Blender 3D. So there's another method using a Daz importer that's pretty good as well. The reason I don't always use that is because it's harder to use an animated character. You basically have to do all the animating in Blender if you use the Daz importer. So I may redo that video later on, I'm not sure yet. Guess it depends on the feedback. Just looking through every material that has to deal with the eyes. I think the eyes are pretty much done. Now for the eyelashes, see how that turns out. Interesting, because the eyelash material actually looks white. I'm not sure why. That's the image texture, and that's nothing to do with us. So there we have the eyelashes, but they're white. Should have been brownish. What I'm going to do for right now is just, you hit with the Node Wrangler add-on you can hit Control Shift and left click, and you can preview any node. And you see from the node itself it's just white. I don't know why that image texture is like that. I'm just going to unplug it. So that is how you fix the materials. Go back to layout mode. Go back to solid view. So I'll show you how to fix the materials, fix the fingers, and one last thing as a tip. You know, I brought this over here earlier as a sidewalk. What if I re-enable that armature and drag it over here? FBX. Yeah, bring it around top of it. And I move through the timeline. You see it snaps back over here to the world origin. That's because the armature itself is keyframed to the world origin. Now there are two ways to fix that. In my previous video, I would say go to the dope sheet editor and delete the X, Y, and Z location, rotation, and scale for the armature itself. I would just delete these 9. That's a little destructive, so what I was also taught is that all you have to do is go back to here, hit Control S to put, Shift S, put the cursor at world origin, hit Shift A, add a empty plane axis. And I'm going to parent the armature to the empty. Select the armature, then the empty. Hit Control P to parent object. Now when I select the empty and move it over here, and then move through the timeline, it moves where I want it to move. And that's about it. That's the basics of bringing your Daz character out of Daz Studio and into Blender 2.8 using the FBX file format. Hopefully you found this helpful. Please consider subscribing for more Blender tutorials. If you like the video, go ahead and hit the like button, and when you subscribe, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications when a new Blender tutorial comes out. Like I said, check out the playlist for different methods for going from Daz to Blender. Thank you. Have a blessed day.